Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing very well. So I just watched Coming to America. Let's talk about it. So Coming to America is directed by Craig Brewer, and this is of course the long anticipated sequel to the original Coming to America, which starred Eddie Murphy and was pretty much this breakout hit. This is an iconic film in American cinema. No one can doubt or dispute the influence and the cultural impact of the original Coming to America. And so to see it have a sequel 30 years later and that it's dropped on a streaming service is also a pretty big deal. So I'm going to be going through my thoughts on Coming to America. But before we dive into that, as per usual, if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to my channel and make sure you turn on your notifications so that you can be told when I upload next. But without further ado, let's jump right into this. Okay, so before we even get started, you have to know, you really have to understand, some people might jump down the throat of this film, figuratively speaking. Some people might be really pissed about this film's mere existence. Some people might be angry because everything is being remade or everything has a sequel nowadays, especially films that came out 30 years ago all of a sudden need to warrant a sequel, which makes no sense to a lot of people. Like, I get it. People are frustrated with the state of Hollywood. People want to see more creativity and imagination be explored in this industry. I understand, and I'm completely with you, but listen, the film is good. The film is good. I'm so sorry. I don't know how else to tell you this, but I enjoyed this film. Now, listen, is it an Oscar bait film? Absolutely not. Okay, it's not going to be winning any awards unless it's for costuming. We'll talk about that in a second, but it's not designed to be prestigious. It's not designed to get 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's just designed to give you a good time and let you bask in your nostalgic feels, okay? This is very much a nostalgia-driven film in a way that nostalgia sells better than sex. This film is selling you nostalgia. So clearly, I'm a fan. We're going to run through some of the things that I really did enjoy about this film before delving into the things that even I have to admit were a little bit crazy. So first off, you have the original cast return for this film. Now, I recently rewatched Coming to America after I saw the trailer for its sequel, and I have to say, seeing the cast back after 30 years, it was crazy. Like, it was surreal to see this cast, especially because a lot of them haven't aged that much. Like, they don't look 30 years old. I mean, Eddie Murphy looks very, very good for his age, whatever age that may be. But it is very impressive to see them all look pretty much the same as the way that they did previously in the original film. To see them return as well. I mean, you have pretty much all of the characters that were present in the original film make a return for this sequel, which is seldom seen. And they're all still so charismatic. They all make for a great cast for this film and a great kind of foundation for the additional cast that we get here with the newcomers. And you have Jermaine Fowler portraying Prince Akeem, or should I say King Akeem's bastard son, okay, who's back in America, and he needs to go fetch him in order for him to be the heir to the throne and in order for him to be taken seriously as a king. So that's the whole storyline playing out there. But the new additions to the cast are great. I mean, you also have Wesley Snipes. Oh my goodness. Wesley Snipes in this film is out of control. I was already so excited to see the pairing of Wesley Snipes and Eddie Murphy after their appearance in Dolomite Is My Name, which was one of my favorite films of 2019. So underrated. You should definitely check it out on Netflix. But here, Wesley Snipes is just on another level. He's just on another level. Like, every single scene steals it, absolutely steals it. He is mwah. And then you have his daughter, who's portrayed by Teyana Taylor, who's also phenomenal. I mean, she's the new barking woman, the one who famously in the original film was left barking like a dog because the prince told her to. Well, she's the kind of new version of that. I believe she's her niece, actually, but I would still say that she had a great charisma to her. She had a great screen presence to her. I mean, she was just absolutely stunning. She had this huge entrance which was just just as incredible, just as impressive as in the original film. I mean, just hats off to the whole cast. Now, as I mentioned, I did recently rewatch the original Coming to America after seeing the trailer for the sequel, and I have to say there were extended periods of time with that original film where I didn't feel like it was at its funniest. I feel like my memories of the film were quite fond and I was looking at it through rose-tinted glasses, but having seen it recently, I do think there were a few lulls in the original film where I personally wasn't laughing out loud the entire time. Now, that's not to say that I was supposed to, because there was time to kind of build the character of Prince Hakeem and build his relationship with Lisa, so that's very understandable. But I feel like the sequel suited my humor sensibilities a little bit more. I feel like it's because it's more modern, and so the kind of jokes that are told here are more in line with what I would find to be more funny. I have to say though, one of the reasons why the original film is so iconic and is so well known is because it had that very zany, very edgy comedy of the 80s and early 90s and even seeping into the 2000s. And I have to say, I did notice that that was very much turned down just a little bit for the sequel. I do feel like the PC culture that we live in today very much influenced the kinds of jokes that we saw present in the sequel to Coming to America. And actually the film itself does comment on this through some of its more controversial characters, but I do have to say that overall it was felt. The feeling of living in a more PC society was definitely felt, and it definitely influenced the types of jokes that we found in this film. Now, I personally didn't take issue with it because, again, my sense of humor is more aligned with the modern sensibilities anyway, because I've grown up during this time. So I felt like the sense of humor from 30 years ago was quite eye-opening, okay? My eyebrows were up here the entire time when I was watching the original Coming to America. But I did find this film to be funny. It wasn't like hilarious to me. Like, it wasn't like I was dying the whole time, but there were a few chuckle-worthy moments. And also, I didn't always feel like the edgy humor had to be entirely sacrificed in favor of being wholly PC. For example, we do still have the over-sexualization of women, and in particular African women, in the film, but this time around they decided to make it 21st century appropriate by kind of turning the tables and presenting to us the male alternatives to the over-sexualization. Of course, we see the character of Mary, portrayed by Leslie Jones, who has her bath in the palace, and instead of a female royal bather, she ends up with a male one. So like, it's equality, you see. This is what equality looks like. This is what feminism looks like, and honestly, we love to see it. But the modernization doesn't just stop there. Oh no, because we also got a fresher take on representation of female characters all around. For example, the love interest in the film, who this time around is Mirembe, she has a dream. She is Lavelle's barber, and she's the one that kind of styles his hair when he gets there, and she has a dream of one day owning her own barbershop, which ties in perfectly to the barbershop characters in Queens. But it seems as though the film is making a conscious effort to create a little bit more of a three-dimensional character in the main love interest, as opposed to making her just an object of Lavelle's affections. And for the most part, she still is, okay? For the most part, she still is, but still, there is an attempt there to give her a little bit more complexity than we would usually see in a film like this, or indeed in this very film's predecessor. And then we also have, of course, King Akeem's daughters. I think this is a prime example of modernization taking place within this franchise, because we have the depiction of these very distinctly different but still quite, you know, powerful, assertive and confident female characters in the prince's, or the king, sorry, the king's daughters, and in particular in Mika, who is portrayed by Kiki Laynes, excellently, I might add. Okay, this girl has been working, she's been doing her job, she's been earning every single paycheck. We love to see it. She was great in If Beale Street Could Talk, and of course in The Old Guard, so I'm happy to see her again here. But she is King Akeem and Queen Lisa's oldest daughter, and she has been raised to be this leader, to be a great queen one day. She's taken it upon herself to learn about the country's culture and history, to learn learn about leadership and to be a powerful warrior, but it seems as though all of her efforts are for naught because the law says that she could never be a ruler on her own. She would need a husband in order to rule as king. And even still, if her father were to randomly find an older brother that she didn't even know about and end up plopping him on the throne instead, she would have nothing to say about it. And of course, that's exactly what happens. And so she's just side-eyeing her dad the whole time, like, seriously, this rando from Queens, seriously, you're gonna give him your throne? So I feel like that's a very kind of Princess Jasmine in Aladdin live action remake kind of storyline, okay, that we've seen before, especially with this, you know, new wave feminism that's explored in Hollywood film these days. But I feel like it's much more justified in Coming to America, to be fair, because in the remake of Aladdin, Jasmine didn't really have anything to offer as a leader, whereas here it's established more firmly that Mika very much has trained her whole life and she has studied her whole life. So it seems as though she would make a great leader if not for the country's laws and traditions surrounding gender roles. And on top of this, feminism, or this film's version of feminism, isn't the only social justice topic that this film covers. It also sneakily and very funnily covers the topic of child soldiers, okay? Like, very briefly, we get that being explored in this film as well through Wesley Snipes' character, who is an army general, or the general of some troops who are actually against the king. I don't know why the king won't just send his army against him. Like, I don't know why he's even entertaining this man. This man is crazy. This man threatened to kill him. Whatever, we're not talking about that now. But we have the presence of child soldiers, okay? We have the presence of a militia who's literally right next door. Nextdoria? Isn't that what the village is called? Nextdoria. And then we also, at the beginning of the film, have somewhat of an exploration of nepotism and favoritism in the workplace. But ultimately, to be fair, Lavelle ends up being just fine because it turns out that he is in fact the son of a king. Even though the comedy of this film is very much first and foremost its priority, it does still touch on some really interesting and relevant topics, especially when it comes to the exploration of African monarchies, although that is such a generalization. It really isn't specific at all, so it's a wide-ranging topic to explore. But the idea that, you know, monarchies would prefer male heirs is not new. It's something that we've seen in African monarchies, but also in Asia and also in Europe once upon a time. In fact, it wasn't until 2013 that the British royal family actually changed the law so that it would be the firstborn child who would be the heir to the throne as opposed to the firstborn son. So that was still very much in action up until 2013. And even then, it's not even really relevant because Prince William and Kate already have a firstborn son, so they don't even need to worry about it. But yeah, this is very much a thing that exists in the real world. So even though it's explored in this comedic film, it does touch on some pretty interesting topics that we see in actuality. As I said, child soldiers, that's real. That touched a nerve with me as someone who comes from the DRC. And speaking of the film's portrayal of African culture, like I said, it's very generalist, okay? It very much views African culture through the lens of Americans. We see this in the kind of music that is involved here, although we did get a couple of Afro beats near the end of the film. That was a nice nod to actual African culture, but I feel like the film could have done a better job of actually depicting modern day African culture. I feel like it very much relies on this kind of antiquated view of what African culture looks like, and it's very much the view that is seen through the eyes of American viewers and American filmmakers. And so I wish they would have modernized that a little bit more, especially after the incredible incredible depiction of Afrocentrism in Black Panther, which this film very much took inspiration from, although you could argue Black Panther would have taken inspiration from Coming to America as well. So we're all influencing each other. But I feel like after Black Panther, it's not enough to just have these stereotypes of, you know, African culture. I feel like this film could have dug a bit deeper to really give us a more innovative perspective on African culture, even if it is portraying the fictional land of Zamunda. And I will also say that I couldn't help but notice that this land of Zamunda takes a lot of inspiration from even Asian Asian culture. For example, the palace itself seems to be modeled after the Taj Mahal, and a lot of Queen Lisa's ensembles seem to resemble Indian saris as opposed to anything that we would see in traditional African culture. Although again, that's a huge kind of umbrella term that doesn't really mean anything. You need to be a lot more specific than that. But speaking of costuming and indeed of Black Panther, I cannot sit here for a minute longer without mentioning the genius, the true brilliance of Ruth E. Carter. Listen, one of the best costume designers working today, Academy Award winner for her work in Black Panther. Absolutely, she is a genius, truly, because the costumes in this film are excellent. Oh my god, the costumes in this film are amazing. The original film was already such a trailblazer when it came to its costuming. I mean, some of the costumes in the original film are just iconic, but I think Ruth E. Carter does such a great job in, you know, emanating the feel, the kind of aesthetic of the original, and also modernizing that, but also giving us just a variety. I mean, we have sportswear in the case of Mika and the clothes that she wears. We have these regal robes that King Akeem wears, and we also have the more kind of young, kind of street style that his son Lavelle wears throughout the film. I mean, there's just a variety on display here. It's so impressive, and I really think that the lavish costuming goes such a long way in order to make this film feel so much richer and the world to feel so much more authentic. And once again, I had a really fun time with this one, but there were still issues that I will point out, because this is after all a review of the good and the bad. So first up, I would say, okay, I understand if some of you think this, that there is a little bit too much reliance on the success of the original film. Okay, I see it. Okay, there is a lot of callbacks. There are a lot of scenes directly from the original film kind of just dropped right in the middle of its sequel. And they're supposed to kind of, again, bring that sense of nostalgia right in you, hit you in the nostalgia feels. But I do think that to have like 10% of the runtime be the footage from the original film is kind of unacceptable. Like, even for me, even when I'm having a fun time, okay? And secondly, of course, the overall storyline bears a lot of resemblance to the original film's plot. Yeah, I see it, okay? But it's all in the execution. I still think it was fun in the way that it was executed. And of course, in the context that it was executed in, that being, you know, instead of the 1980s, we get to see it take place in 2019, I guess. So that must be worth something, no? And I would say, actually, that one thing that the original film did much better was the development of the relationship between Lisa and Prince Akeem. I feel like the relationship between Lavelle and Mirembe was so rushed. Like, it wasn't properly developed, and I actually thought that in the end there, because it does kind of embrace some feminist ideals, that Mirembe would try to take things slow with Lavelle and actually get to know him, instead of just jumping into this chapel wedding with that horrible minister again. Oh my god, he's back. The horrible minister. But yeah, in the end they get married, because I guess it's a callback to the original film, even though for that specific relationship and in the context that they exist in, it would have made more sense for them to take it slow in their relationship and to allow Mirembe to actually set up her business in the way that she wanted to. And finally, I have to say that, you know, similarly to the WandaVision episode that I just watched, I do think that some of the CG in this film was quite shaky. Okay, now this film to me feels quite expensive. I don't know what the budget was on this one. I'll put it down on the screen here, but it feels quite expensive to me, especially with the costuming, the cast, you know, everyone is back, and also just the formation of the world of Zamunda. It's pretty impressive. I don't feel like they skimped out on this film when it comes to financing, and especially considering all of the product placement. Okay, I think they got the money. They got the money to make this one, but I do think that the CG at times, especially with the animation of the characters and also the de-aging, the de-aging of Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall for that scene, that was wonky, okay? But otherwise, I do think they did a really great job of realizing the world of Zamunda, although again, I do wish that they took the perspective of modern day Africa in the way that we saw in Black Panther, and instead of just depicting Zamunda as this basically safari. Basically just a safari which happened to have a palace in the middle of it. Perhaps we could have seen the metropolises that exist in Zamunda instead, that actually generate its economy, because they seem like a very wealthy country for their royalty to be dressed like that. Although we'll leave it at that. But overall, with all of that being said, I'm going to be giving Coming to America a 7 out of 10. So that's it from me. Now that I told you guys my thoughts on Coming to America, it's time for you guys to let me know what you thought of this film down in the comments below. Please be sure to subscribe to catch new videos coming up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!